Close your eyes and let yourself feel the hush of ancient sands, the slow turning of time, the cool shadow of stone columns reaching up toward a midnight sky. Tonight, you are drifting far, far away into a world where the Nile murmurs under silver moonlight, where the scent of lotus and myrrh lingers in the air, and where one woman's voice still whispers across eternity. This is the story of Pharaoh Hatshepsut, a daughter of kings, a queen who rose beyond the expectations of her time, who placed the double crown upon her brow and ruled not as queen, but as king, a sovereign of Egypt in her own right. Her monuments still rise from the sands at Deir el-Bahari, pale against the cliffs, kissed by winds that have carried centuries of secrets. Her fleets once rode the Red Sea toward the fabled land of Punt, bringing back incense trees and gold. And though later hands chiseled away her name, the stones remember, the stars remember. Before you lie down to get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I'm doing here. If you wish, you can also leave a gentle note in the comments, telling me where and when you're listening from. It's always a joy to feel how far these stories travel. And now, let's drift together. Let's step softly into the shadowed courts of ancient Thebes, where oil lamps flicker and the river hums lullabies. Breathe slowly. Let each sound of history settle around you, and let us begin. A hush of night drapes over the Nile. You hear the ripple of water against a stone quay, soft as the sigh of a sleeping child. Somewhere beyond the darkened gardens, a heron lifts its wings, and you feel the brush of air as if its feathers passed across your own cheek. In the distance, the grand temples of Thebes glow faintly, their pylons etched against the night. Incense smolders at unseen altars, sending tendrils of myrrh and frankincense into the air, and the sound of a sistrum, a sacred rattle, hums softly in your ear. You feel yourself drifting closer, step by step, until the world of the 18th dynasty envelops you like a warm linen cloak. You see her as a child, Hatshepsut, daughter of Thutmose I, standing beneath columns carved with lotus blossoms. She is small, the gold of the desert caught in her dark eyes, and the priests pass by, murmuring prayers to Amun-Ra. The palace around her breathes with life. Scribes bend over scrolls. Artisans grind malachite to paint the eyes of gods. And far off, ships are loaded with grain and wine to sail downriver. Time drifts. Like papyrus boats on still water, you walk with her through the gardens, where papyrus sways and lotus blooms open under the sun. You feel the heat on your skin, the fine dust of sandstone beneath your feet, the whisper of chants from the temple beyond. Her father's court is a place of power and ceremony. The clink of gold bracelets, the low tones of foreign envoys speaking of Nubia, of Byblos, of lands beyond the Red Sea, and all the while, the child listens. She hears the stories of ancestors carved into tomb walls, stories of kings who shaped rivers and moved armies, of queens who whispered guidance into the ears of their sons. And as the sun falls behind the cliffs, she stands still and feels the weight of something unspoken, as though the gods themselves lean close to murmur a secret meant only for her. The night deepens. The Nile glimmers like obsidian beneath the stars. And somewhere, far beyond what she yet knows, the future begins to weave its threads, drawing her toward the throne that waits beyond time. You feel your breath slow. The warmth of the desert night folds around you, and you sink deeper, deeper, as the story of Hatshepsut's rise drifts like a lullaby through your dreams. A hush of dawn settles over the Valley of the Kings. You feel the cool breath of early morning moving through the cliffs, stirring the palms and whispering against the unfinished tombs. The sun has not yet climbed above the horizon, but the eastern sky is painted with pale rose and gold, a soft promise of day. You stand at the edge of Thebes, watching shadows dissolve into light, feeling the sand shift gently beneath your feet. You hear the sound of voices rising from the palace courtyard, low chants of priests greeting the sun, their words ancient even then. They sing to Ra as his bark sails across the heavens, and their voices carry through colonnades carved with hieroglyphs that gleam faintly with inlaid lapis and turquoise. You walk closer, moving through the fragrant air, the scent of acacia and lotus wrapping around you like a silken shawl. Hatshepsut is older now. The child of the palace walks with measured steps through the ceremonial halls, her long linen dress trailing behind her. She moves with grace, but her eyes are bright with questions. You see the scribes bow as she passes. The overseers straighten. The artisans pause in their careful work of carving and painting. There is a quiet authority in her presence, though she is still called princess, still a daughter rather than a sovereign. Yet already, she listens more deeply than others, notices what others miss, the cracks in stone, the pattern of shadows, the rhythm of decisions made behind heavy doors. You follow her as she climbs the steps to a high terrace. From here, the city stretches out in every direction, the Nile winding like a silver serpent, the clustered huts of farmers beyond the temple walls, the distant fields where workers bend over ripening grain. She rests her hands on the cool stone railing, and you feel the texture of it under your own palms, ancient, smooth in places, rough in others, alive with chisel marks left by long dead hands. Below, you see the temple of Karnak, columns rising like papyrus, stalks turned to stone. Priests carry offerings of bread and beer, oxen and incense for the god Amun who dwells within. The air is alive with devotion and the gravity of divine kingship. The belief that Pharaoh is not merely human, but the living embodiment of Horus, the bridge between earth and sky. You feel this belief humming in the air like a hidden drumbeat, and you sense that Hatshepsut, standing beside you, hears it too. Time drifts again. You see her wedding ceremony, the union with her half-brother Thutmose, a bond meant to keep the royal bloodline pure. You see her veiled in white linen, hear the soft chants of the priestesses as they anoint her with sacred oils, smell the heavy sweetness of blue lotus offered on golden plates. In this world, marriage is not just love or alliance. It is the weaving of power and divine will. She walks beside Thutmose II through the temple courts, their crowns catching the sunlight, their shadows merging on the red stone floor. Years pass, softly, like sand through an open hand. Thutmose II rules, and Hatshepsut stands beside him as great royal wife, her voice a counsel in the dark, her hands guiding decisions that few ever see. But you feel her stillness, her patience, as if she is waiting for something larger, something written beyond the edges of her life. And then you are there, in the hall when news comes that Thutmose is gone. The pharaoh is dead. The courtiers speak in hushed tones, their faces pale in the torchlight. A boy remains, Thutmose III, barely more than a child, too young to rule alone. You feel the uncertainty that hangs over the court like a storm cloud, the shuffle of sandals on stone, as priests and nobles whisper behind columns. Who will guide Egypt now? You watch as Hatshepsut steps forward. Her linen is plain, but the way she carries herself is like a pillar carved from desert rock. She speaks softly, but her words steady the room. She will serve as regent, she says, until the boy is old enough to rule. But even as she speaks, you feel the shift of something deeper, the turning of a tide that none can yet name. The gods seem to listen, the air itself holding its breath. Days blend into months, and Hatshepsut begins to act not only as guardian, but as pharaoh in truth. You see her presiding over temple ceremonies, her voice calm as she speaks the sacred words, her hands offering bread and beer to the gods. You hear the scratching of reeds on papyrus as new decrees are written in her name. At first she appears beside the boy king, in reliefs, smaller, deferential, but slowly, softly, her image grows equal in size. Her headdress changes, and the crook and flail, symbols of kingship, rest in her own hands. The artisans carve her likeness with the false beard of Pharaoh, the Neme's headdress striped in blue and gold. You see her statues rise, not as queen, but as king, strong-jawed, commanding, eternal, and yet, when you look closely into the stone, you still see her eyes, that quiet, searching gaze from the girl in the garden, now tempered by years, now blazing with purpose. You walk with her through the hall of pillars at Karnak. The columns rise like a forest turned to stone, every surface carved with prayers to Amun, every shadow whispering of eternity. She pauses before an obelisk, newly raised, its tip gilded to catch the sun. It is taller than any before it, a needle of stone pointing toward the gods. She places her wanted on its base, and you feel the coolness of the granite, the permanence of her will. Beyond the temple walls, life goes on. Farmers tend to wheat and barley, children laugh in narrow streets, potters spin clay on wheels, their fingers slick with Nile mud. The scent of baking bread drifts from clay ovens, and the river hums its ageless song. But in the palace and temple, plans unfold, plans for monuments, for voyages, for a reign that will stretch like the river itself, wide and glittering. The sun lowers, casting long shadows across the courts. Hatshepsut stands at the top of the terrace once more, her eyes on the horizon where the Nile meets the desert. The sky burns orange and violet, and the wind carries the faint sound of temple drums, steady as a heartbeat. She breathes in, and so do you, feeling the weight of centuries in that single moment. As night falls, you drift deeper into the rhythm of her story. You feel the hush of the desert, the steady pulse of the Nile, the silent song of stone monuments that will outlast memory. You let the images settle like soft sand over your thoughts until all that remains is a calm, endless horizon, and you sink slowly, gently, into sleep. Night folds over the desert like a velvet curtain, and you feel the weight of silence broken only by the sigh of wind through tamarisk trees. A crescent moon rises above Thebes, casting silver light over mud brick walls and sandstone pylons. You walk softly through the avenues of sphinxes, their leonine bodies half-shadowed, their faces serene, watchful, eternal. The torchlight from the temple gates flickers on polished granite, on gold inlaid hieroglyphs, whispering praises to Amun. The days of Hatshepsut's regency have lengthened. You feel it in the air, the quiet certainty with which she moves through the palace courts. The boy king plays with carved toys in shaded gardens, but the affairs of the two lands now flow through her hands. Papyrus scrolls filled with accounts and decrees puzzle in the scribal chambers. Officials bow low when she enters, their linen robes brushing the floor. You stand beside her as dawn rises over Karnak. The columns are bathed in soft light, and you hear the rhythmic chants of the morning offering. A priest swings a bronze censer, and the smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of frankincense and cassia. Hatshepsut stands before the shrine, the double plumes of the Amun crown rising from her brow. She offers bread and beer, milk and honey, her voice smooth as flowing water, as she recites ancient words carved onto walls long before her birth. In that moment, you feel the merging of mortal and divine, the pharaoh as both human heart and God's chosen vessel. She begins to dream in stone. You see her seated in council chambers, listening to her chief architect, Sinanmut, a man whose skill shapes visions into walls and pillars. He unfurls sketches on papyrus, plans for a temple unlike any other, set against the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, where the sun rises like molten gold. She listens, nods slowly, her fingers tracing the lines of colonnades and terraces, the ramps that will ascend toward heaven itself. Time slows. You watch the temple take shape in your mind. Before you see a single block laid, ramps rise. Rows of colonnades march forward like sentinels. Terraces bloom with gardens of myrrh trees and papyrus pools. The cliffs cradle it like a protective arm. Even the very name whispers softly, Djeser Djeseru, the Holy of Holies. In the stillness of evening, she walks the site before construction begins. You follow her through the wadi, the dry riverbed littered with ancient stones. The cliffs glow red in the setting sun, streaked with shadows like brushstrokes. She places her head against the warm rock, and you feel the heat seep into your own palm. She whispers a prayer, not loud, not for others to hear, a prayer that her temple will outlast time, that it will honor the gods and bind her name to eternity. Days become seasons. The sounds of chisels and hammers echo against the cliffs. You see lines of laborers hauling limestone blocks, their muscles shining with sweat in the sun. Overseers shout orders, their staffs tapping against the stone to set the rhythm of work. Scribes record each delivery of timber from Lebanon, each shipment of granite from Aswan. You see Senenmut moving through the site, his eyes bright with purpose, directing crews, checking measurements, pausing now and then to look up at the cliffs as though he too feels the presence of the gods. You feel the heartbeat of this living construction, the way each stone is laid with ceremony, the way each column is carved with stories of gods and kings, of Hatshepsut herself offering to Amun, receiving life, stability, dominion. She begins to appear everywhere in stone, wearing the kepresh, blue crown of war, wearing the false beard of Pharaoh, standing before the gods as their equal. You watch the artists at work, chiseling her image into eternity, and though you see the strength of kingship in her posture, you still see her calm, her grace, her humanity hidden beneath the trappings of power. Beyond the temple walls, her vision reaches farther. One night, under the light of flickering oil lamps, she speaks with her advisors about lands beyond the Red Sea. They speak of Punt, a place of incense trees and ebony, of exotic animals and gold. Her eyes gleam as she listens. Egypt needs these riches, not for war, but for life, for the temples, for the offerings. She orders ships to be built at the port of Qusair, orders crews to be chosen, captains to be blessed by priests. You hear the murmurs of excitement, the scratching of reed pens, recording her words. It is not conquest she dreams of, but connection, a bridge between lands, a tide of gifts and trade. The winds shift. You stand with her at the shipyard, the scent of resin and fresh-cut cedar heavy in the air. Craftsmen lash timbers, polish oars, weave sails from linen. The ships take shape like living creatures, their prows painted with protective eyes. You feel the breeze from the Red Sea on your skin. Hear the calls of gulls overhead. Taste the salt on your lips. The fleet is ready. At dawn, the ships depart. You watch them glide over the blue-green water, sails billowed by the morning wind, carrying emissaries and soldiers, cargo and dreams. Priests on the shore raise their hands in blessing, chanting hymns to Hathor, Lady of the Sycamore, protector of far journeys. Hatshepsut stands on a high platform, her silhouette dark against the rising sun, watching until the last sail vanishes beyond the horizon. Weeks stretch into months, and you walk again through the half-finished temple. The ramps are higher now, the walls carved with new reliefs. You trace them with your fingers. Images of ships arriving, laden with treasures, ivory tusks, live myrse trees, exotic animals, gold rings, and ebony logs. You see the figures of Puntites, their huts on stilts, their hands raised in greeting. It is all there, captured in stone, the voyage eternalized for every generation to come. The sound of construction is softer now as the temple nears completion. You step onto the top terrace at dusk. The cliffs tower above you, streaked with twilight shadows. Below, the Nile winds through green fields. The villages glow with tiny lamps, and the first stars bloom in the indigo sky. Hatshepsut stands beside you, her face calm, her eyes fixed on the horizon. There is pride in her gaze, but also humility, a knowledge that even pharaohs are threads in the endless tapestry of time. The air cools. You hear the low call of night birds, the distant rush of river water. You breathe in the scent of stone and earth, and feel the weight of centuries pressing gently, not crushing, but enfolding. You see the temple rising in moonlight, pale and serene, a hymn carved into the very bones of the earth. And as you stand there, side by side with a ruler whose name will one day be hidden, you feel the stillness settle deep inside you. Time slows. The stars wheel overhead. The desert exhales. Your eyes grow heavy. The wind hums a lullaby through the columns, and you sink softly deeper into a night of dreams and distant histories, wrapped in the quiet legacy of a pharaoh who built for eternity. Let yourself drift deeper still into sleep. The night air is warm, scented with distant water and the faint perfume of acacia blossoms. You stand again beneath the columns of Deir el-Bahari, the temple now alive with moonlight. The white limestone glows softly as if lit from within, and shadows move gently across carved reliefs. Somewhere far below, the Nile breathes in the dark, its slow current whispering ancient songs. You hear the hum of a single drum, deep and steady, echoing from the inner sanctum. A torch flickers, throwing gold light against the hieroglyphs that dance along the walls. You move slowly through the colonnades, your fingertips brushing carved lotus petals, each petal a prayer frozen in stone. Hatshepsut is at the heart of this sacred place tonight. She stands in the sanctuary, the scent of incense wrapping her like invisible silk. Priests in white linen move around her, chanting to Amun, offering milk and bread, wine and fragrant oil. The smoke rises, curling around the tall pillars, and you feel the presence of eternity in this darkened chamber, a presence that hums through the very stone beneath your feet. She steps forward to kneel before the statue of Amun, her golden pectoral gleaming in the light. You see the glint of the uraeus on her crown, the serpent symbol coiled and watchful. She lays her hands upon the altar, and her voice is calm, low, reverent. In that voice, you hear the weight of two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt, united under her name. She prays for harmony, for the flooding of the Nile to be bountiful, for trade routes to remain safe, for her people to thrive under the gaze of the gods. You follow her into daylight. The sun breaks over Thebes, spilling molten light across the temple terraces. Artisans begin their work early, their chisels striking rhythmically, shaping blocks that will fit together like pieces of eternity. The temple is nearly complete now, terraces layered like steps toward heaven. Gardens bloom with imported myrrh trees, whose roots drink deeply from carefully tended soil. You brush your hand against a leaf, and it feels alive, soft and fragrant. A tree once carried across seas, now rooted in sacred ground. The years flow like the river, and you walk with Hatshepsut through the open courts of Karnak. Her court surrounds her. Senenmut, the trusted architect, Hapuseneb, high priest of Amun, Nehsi, overseer of foreign lands. They speak softly of shipments arriving from Punt, of taxes collected from Nubian provinces, of tribute offered by Canaanite cities. You hear the names of distant places, Byblos, Gaza, Yam, each name a thread connecting Egypt's golden web. She listens, nods, and speaks in the measured tones, her words thoughtful, deliberate. You feel her vision stretching beyond the borders of her land. She is not a conqueror drenched in war paint. She is a builder, a dreamer, one who carves her name into stone through trade and devotion. You sense that those around her know this, that they follow her not only out of duty, but out of something rarer, a deep respect that glows quietly in their eyes. Later, as the sun sets, She walks alone through the Hall of Ancestors, where carved cartouches tell the lineage of kings. You follow her footstep, your own echoing softly in the great hall. Torches flicker. Dust motes hang like stars in the warm air. She pauses before her father's name, Thutmose the First, and her fingers trace the carved hieroglyphs. You feel the connection between them, a golden thread woven through time. The girl who once stood quietly at his side now stands as Pharaoh, carrying his bloodline and his dreams forward into eternity. The night deepens. Outside, the desert wind stirs, carrying whispers through the temple windows. You step out with her onto a high terrace. The horizon burns with the last embers of sunset, and the first stars bloom like tiny lilies in the dark. She gazes out over the floodplains, the villages, the distant pylons, and you feel the weight of her thoughts, the burdens of rule, the fragile balance between divine will and mortal duty. But you also feel something softer beneath it all, a stillness, a sense that she knows she is only one among many, a thread in a great tapestry, and yet she is determined to weave her part with beauty and care. You feel her breathing beside you, slow and steady, the same rhythm as the Nile far below. Time drifts, and you drift with it. You see the temple of Deir el-Bahari on the day of its dedication. Crowds gather, their linen robes bright in the sunlight, their voices a low, excited hum. Priests lead processions of oxen, geese, baskets of bread, jars of honey, all carried to the altar as offerings. Trumpets sound, their silver notes slicing through the warm air. Drums beat, feet stamp, dancers twirl, their arms outstretched to the sky. Hatshepsut emerges, her headdress blazing in the sun, the false beard of kingship glinting like polished obsidian. She raises her arms to the crowd, and a hush falls over the temple. You feel the moment stretch, timeless as she speaks of devotion to Amun, of Egypt's greatness, of her vision for a land where temples rise like mountains and gardens bloom in the desert. The people kneel, and the chant of her name rolls like thunder through the cliffs. You stand close enough to see the light in her eyes, steady, unwavering, filled with something far beyond pride. You see the sculptors capturing this moment even as it happens, chiseling her image into the walls, ensuring that her words, her face, her deeds will outlast the turning of dynasties. As the ceremony ends, you wander through the shadowed porticos. The scent of lilies lingers. The distant sound of flutes drifts through the air. The temple feels alive, as if the stone itself hums with quiet joy. You sit upon a low step, feeling the coolness of the stone against your skin, and watch as the sky shifts from blue to indigo. Hatshepsut lingers too, standing in the courtyard as the last of the worshippers depart. She looks toward the river, the sails of trading ships glowing pale in the dying light. You sense her thoughts reaching far beyond the horizon, to lands yet unseen, to legacies not yet written. The wind plays with the edge of her robe, and she does not move, only breathes, only dreams. The stars sharpen overhead. The temple glows in the moonlight. Every carved pillar a prayer, every terrace a step toward eternity. You feel your own heartbeat slow, matching the calm rhythm of this place, of this moment suspended between worlds. The wind sighs, the river sings, and you sink deeper still into the embrace of history, into the soft cradle of night. Let yourself drift, gently, ever deeper, into sleep. The night is cool along the Nile. You hear the lapping of water against reed beds, the distant hoot of an owl hidden among palm fronds. A silver ribbon of moonlight stretches across the river, and you feel the ancient calm that has lingered here since the first fields were sown. You step onto a dock of weathered planks, and the faint creak of wood beneath your feet seems to echo across centuries. In the distance, lanterns sway gently on moored ships. You watch as their reflections shiver on the dark water, as though the stars themselves have fallen and scattered across the river's surface. Somewhere, a temple sistrum rattles softly, marking the hour, and you feel the rhythm of time itself slowing to match your breath. Hatshepsut stands by the prow of a ceremonial bark, draped in linen, the color of desert sand. Her headdress glimmers in the torchlight, and the carved uraeus at her brow seems almost alive. Around her, priests sing low chants, and lotus flowers are scattered into the water, each bloom drifting slowly, carried by the current. This is a night of procession, a night to honor Amun, and the entire city hums with reverence. The oars dip into the river as the bark begins to glide. You step aboard, feeling the gentle sway of the vessel beneath your feet. The air smells of lotus and myrrh, the faint tang of cedar resin from the polished railings. Along the banks, people kneel, holding torches that paint their faces gold and crimson. Their voices rise in unison, a sound both ancient and alive, calling blessings upon the ruler who has become their anchor in uncertain times. As the river widens, the procession becomes a dream. You see the silhouette of Karnak's pylons against the star-streaked sky. You see the unfinished obelisks waiting in their quarries, massive and silent, yet destined to rise. You hear the splash of oars, the deep hum of hymns, the rhythmic beat of a single drum. Hatshepsut stands still, and the moonlight catches her profile, serene, determined, touched with something eternal. Later, the bark returns, and you follow her into the quiet courts. The crowds disperse, their footsteps fading into the night, leaving only the soft crackle of torches. She walks with Senenmut, discussing new plans, another pylon perhaps, or a line of statues along the temple causeway. He speaks of measurements, of transporting granite, of the skill of craftsmen who can coax life from stone. She listens, nodding, her fingers trailing lightly along the carved reliefs as they walk. You see those reliefs as if lit by a hidden lamp. Hatshepsut receiving life from Amun. Hatshepsut leading processions of captives and gifts. Hatshepsut as a lion striking down enemies. The images are bold, yet you sense the quiet grace beneath them, the stillness at the heart of her reign. Weeks pass, and the temple grows. You move through its chambers like a drifting spirit. The hypostyle hall rises, columns painted in reds and blues, crowned with open papyrus capitals. The sunlight slants through, creating golden patterns on the floor. Priests carry in offerings, baskets of figs, jars of beer, bolts of fine linen. The air is thick with incense, with the low chanting of sacred texts. You stand beside Hatshepsut as she oversees it all, her presence calm, her eyes luminous with thought. Beyond the temple, Egypt thrives. You walk with her through bustling markets, hearing the calls of merchants selling fish, copper tools, amulets carved in the shape of Bes and Taweret. You smell roasted duck, honey cakes, and the earthy sweetness of newly baked bread. Children run through the alleys, laughing, their bare feet pattering over sun-warmed stone. Craftsmen sit cross-legged, inlaying turquoise into wooden boxes, painting delicate eyes on Ushabti figurines. Hatshepsut pauses to watch a weaver at his loom, the threads bright as sunlight. She asks questions, gentle ones, about his work, about his family, about the harvest. You hear the awe in his voice as he answers, his eyes lowered, his hands still moving. She smiles softly, then moves on, leaving behind a silence full of gratitude. In council, she listens to reports from Nubia, rich in gold and ivory, and from Sinai, where turquoise mines yield treasures for her temples. She hears of new trade expeditions, of cedar wood hauled from Lebanon, of exotic animals brought as tribute. She charts it all with care, ensuring the flow of wealth and blessing back to her people and her gods. As the seasons turn, festivals fill the nights with light. You see dancers in the courtyards, their arms arcing like wings, their anklets ringing. You see processions carrying small gilded shrines, the images of gods hidden within, their faces veiled. Their presence felt like a warmth in the air. Hatshepsut walks at the center, her staff carved with lotus and papyrus, her steps steady as the heartbeat of the land. One evening, after the crowds have gone, you find her alone on the temple's highest terrace. The desert stretches before her, vast and silent. The cliffs glow faintly under starlight, and the wind carries the faint cry of nightbirds. She is still, gazing outward, her hands resting lightly on the railing. You stand beside her, and for a moment, it feels as though time itself has paused. She speaks softly, not to you, not to anyone, but to the night itself. Words you do not entirely hear, yet feel deep in your chest. Words of gratitude, of hope, of a legacy she wishes to plant, like a tree that will outlive her. You sense the weight she carries, not as a burden, but as a sacred trust. The wind shifts. You hear the faint rustle of papyrus leaves in the gardens below. You smell the desert air, dry and sweet, mingled with the lingering fragrance of myrrh from the evening's rites. And then she closes her eyes. You close yours. The temple hums softly behind you, each stone still warm from the sun's touch. The river whispers its lullaby. The stars burn gently, patient and watchful above it all. You feel yourself sinking into that rhythm, the eternal rhythm of a world shaped by hands now dust, a world still alive in stone and wind and water. You let the images blur, let the night enfold you, let the soft murmur of history cradle you deeper, deeper still. Sleep draws closer, like a bark gliding on calm waters, carrying you onward with Pharaoh Hatshepsut into the endless night. Drift softly now, gently, until only dreams remain. Dawn breathes softly over the desert hills. You hear the faint rustle of date palms. the distant bleat of goats being led to graze. The first rays of light kiss the cliffs above Deir el-Bahari, painting them with a soft blush, like rose petals strewn across the sky. You stand on the terrace of the temple, feeling the cool stone beneath your bare feet, listening to the heartbeat of an empire waking once more. Somewhere below, a conch shell sounds, signaling the start of labor on new works. The echo carries through the morning air, and you see lines of workers moving like slow rivers, each bearing tools, baskets of sand, or blocks of limestone. Overseers mark tallies on papyrus scrolls, their voices calm, measured. The hum of life rises like a low hymn. Hatshepsut steps into the sunlight. Her robe is of fine white linen, embroidered with threads of gold. A slender staff rests in her hand, carved with a papyrus and lotus entwined, the unity of Upper and Lower Egypt. Her presence is quiet, yet commanding, like the sun itself as it rises, inevitable and serene. Priests gather around her, their heads shaven, their incense burners swinging gently. She nods, and the day begins. You follow her through the temple's inner halls, where shadows still linger. Torches sputter softly, their smoke curling like slow serpents into the high ceilings. Reliefs line the walls, bright with fresh paint. Ships of Punt riding the waves. Gardens blooming in terraces. Rows of offerings stacked high. Figs, jars of wine, bound cattle, chests of turquoise. Every carving sings of prosperity, of journeys completed, of divine favor bestowed upon the land. As you walk, you feel the coolness of the stone against your fingertips. Each hieroglyph seems to hum with meaning, each image carrying the memory of hands that carved it under the hot Egyptian sun. You pause before one scene, Hatshepsut herself, standing before Amun, the god extending the Ankh, the sign of life, to her lips. You almost feel the breath of eternity pass through that simple, carved gesture. Outside, the Nile glimmers like molten gold. You see boats gliding by, their sails billowing softly, their hulls laden with grain, copper, incense. The river is the lifeline of Egypt, and you feel its rhythm in your own chest, slow and endless. Fishermen cast their nets with smooth, practiced motions, and children laugh from the banks, their voices carrying across the water. In the palace at Thebes, Hatshepsut meets her council. You sit quietly at the edge, feeling the cool shade of the high-ceilinged chamber. Palm wood fans sway gently, stirred by servants. Senenmut unrolls new plans for an obelisk, taller than any yet raised. Nexi speaks of trade routes secured and guarded. Hapusaneb details new festivals to honor Amun and Hathor. Each voice blends with the next, calm and purposeful, weaving the tapestry of a kingdom. Hatshepsut listens. Her eyes are thoughtful, clear, reflecting the soft lamplight. When she speaks, the room grows still. She speaks of balance, of temples as living prayers, of voyages not for conquest, but for communion. You hear the care in her tone, the weight of foresight. Her words feel like water poured into dry earth, soaking in deeply, bringing life where silence once reigned. Later, you walk with her through the temple gardens. Imported myrrh trees sway gently, their leaves silver green in the light. The air is rich with the scent of blossoms, of damp earth carefully tended. Pools shimmer between low walls, their surfaces dotted with lotus flowers. Frogs croak softly from the edges, and dragonflies skim the water like tiny living jewels. She pauses to touch a leaf, to watch a bird take flight, her expression softened by some private thought. You feel the world slow around you. You hear only the trickle of water from a hidden fountain, the distant call of a heron. In that stillness, Hatshepsut speaks, not to her priests, not to her council, but softly, almost to herself. She speaks of the ancestors whose tombs watch from the cliffs. She speaks of the gods whose favor shapes the seasons. She speaks of the future, of works yet to be built, of a legacy that will hold her name in stone long after her breath has stilled. The day drifts toward at evening. You follow her to Karnak, where the setting sun spills gold through the hypostyle hall. The columns blaze with color, reds, ochres, blues. Shadows lengthen across the hieroglyphs, turning them into rivers of story. A procession moves slowly down the central aisle, priests bearing offerings, singers lifting their voices in low, hypnotic chants. Hatshepsut walks among them, her steps measured, her gaze lifted to the towering stone above. The obelisk she ordered is ready to be raised. You feel the ground tremble as teams of workers haul it into place with ropes and sheer determination. The massive granite needle rises inch by inch until it stands upright, gleaming in the last light of day. The crowd gasps. The priests raise their arms in blessing. Hatshepsut closes her eyes for a long moment, her lips moving in silent prayer. You stand with her at the base of the obelisk, tracing the inscriptions with your eyes. Her name is there, carved deep, alongside prayers for eternity, for life, for enduring kingship. You feel the permanence of it, the way stone outlasts flesh, the way words carved here will speak long after tongues have fallen silent. Night settles again. You return to the terraces of Deir el-Bahari. The temple glows softly in the starlight, its ramps and columns like steps leading into the heavens. Hatshepsut stands alone, her figure outlined against the vast dark sky. The wind stirs her robe. You hear the distant sigh of the river, the rustle of papyrus leaves, the gentle creak of ropes against ships in the harbor far below. She looks to the stars, and you feel her thoughts reaching outward, beyond the walls, beyond the kingdom, beyond even her own life. She thinks of the gods, of the endless desert, of the Nile that will keep flowing when her temple is but a ruin. She thinks of her people, of the generations yet unborn who will walk these halls, read these carvings, whisper her name again. You stand beside her in silence. The air is cool, the stars are bright, time feels soft, stretched thin between heartbeat and eternity. And as the night deepens, you feel yourself drifting once more. The hum of temple life fades into the lullaby of wind and water. The images blur, columns, sails, hieroglyphs, becoming a soft tapestry woven into your dreams. Let your breath slow, let your eyes grow heavy, and let the story carry you gently deeper into sleep. The night sky above Thebes is velvet dark, pricked with stars like distant fires. You hear a low breeze sighing through date palms, and somewhere in the distance, a lone jackal cries out. its voice thin and mournful, fading into the vastness of the desert. You are walking with slow steps along a torchlit avenue lined with sphinx statues, their lion bodies crouched, their serene faces turned forever toward the horizon. Each flame flickers, sending warm light across carved paws, across the weathered stone that holds memory within every chisel mark. Hatshepsut is ahead of you, walking in measured rhythm, the sound of her sandals soft against the limestone pavement. Her court follows, murmuring in low tones, but their voices are like the murmur of reeds in the wind. You feel a solemn hush surrounding the procession, a sense that tonight holds something deeper than ceremony, something hidden and ancient. They move into Karnak's great hypostyle hall, where the columns rise like a forest, each one carved with prayers to Amun. The air is cool, thick with incense, lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows high above. You follow, stepping onto floors polished smooth by countless generations. The priests begin their chants, and the words roll like waves, repetitive, hypnotic, older than memory itself. Hatshepsut takes her place before the sacred shrine. A golden statue of Amun gleams in the lamplight, and offerings are placed at its feet. Loaves of bread, jars of honey, bouquets of lotus blossoms. She lifts her hands, her voice steady and melodic as she speaks the invocations. The god is said to hear through stone and silence, and you feel a tremor in the air, a sense that unseen eyes are indeed watching. As the ceremony ends, the crowd disperses, but Hatshepsut lingers. She moves with quiet purpose to a side chamber where few follow. You walk with her, the torchlight dimming to a soft glow. Inside, shelves hold scrolls, plans, records of trade and tribute. Here, away from the public, she bends over a table, her hand steady as she traces the map of a new expedition, southward into Nubia, where gold flows like sunlight trapped in rock. You watch her plan not with haste, but with a patient mind. She speaks softly to her advisors, to Senenmut, to generals and scribes, considering the safety of caravans, the timing of the Nile's flood, the balance between the god's favor and human preparation. You feel the weight of each decision, yet she carries it as lightly as a bird carries wind in its wings. Outside, the night deepens. You walk with her through a colonnade open to the stars. The scent of the gardens drifts in, sweet acacia, night-blooming flowers, the dampness of the pools where papyrus sways. Servants pass silently with lamps, their light glimmering on bronze bowls of water, on jars sealed with beeswax and clay. A harp plays somewhere in the distance, its notes drifting like ripples over a still pond. You pause by a window that looks out over the city. Thebes is quiet now. Most fires banked, most homes dark, but you can see the glow of small hearths, hear faint voices carried on the night air, mothers singing to children, fishermen mending nets, potters tending kilns. Life flows on beneath the rule of this pharaoh who calls herself king, and you feel the fragile miracle of it all. In the following days, you drift with her across Egypt's heartland. You travel by barge along the Nile, the great river stretching endlessly, its banks alive with green fields. Farmers wave as the royal boat glides past. Cattle stand knee-deep in water. Cranes stalk the shallows, and every breeze carries the mingled scents of mud and grain and life itself. Hatshepsut stands at the prow, her eyes scanning the horizon, her thoughts like the river, deep, winding, constant. At night, the barge anchors near small villages. You see fires glowing. Hear the rhythmic thud of mortars as women pound grain. Hear the soft chant of lullabies. Hatshepsut sits beneath an awning, watching the sky fill with stars. She listens to her people speak, listens to their hopes and their hardships. You see her reach for a small child, lifting him gently onto her knee, speaking softly. The boy stares at her crown, wide-eyed, and she laughs, quiet, warm sound that carries through the stillness. The journey takes you south, into lands where the desert narrows and cliffs rise close to the river. Temples carved directly into stone greet you at bends in the water, their facades covered with figures of gods and kings. At one such temple, you step ashore with her. The air is hot, dry, filled with the scent of sandstone. Priests in white greet her with reverence, leading her into halls cool and dim, where statues loom like giants in the shadowed light. She touches the carved walls, feeling the grooves of ancient hieroglyphs. You can almost hear the voices of those who built this place long before, their songs embedded in every block. Hatshepsut prays again, offering gold and incense, asking for favor on the journeys to come. The air is thick with the scent of burning resin, and you feel something deep stir in your own chest, as if the ancient gods themselves are listening through time. Weeks pass. The expedition to Nubia returns. Laden with treasure, you see the procession enter Thebes, hear the sound of drums, see the glitter of gold bracelets, the gleam of ivory tusks. Priests chant blessings, the crowd cheers, and Hatshepsut raises her hand in acknowledgement, her expression serene, but her eyes shining with triumph. These riches will feed temples, support artisans, strengthen Egypt's heartbeat. In the temple that night, new offerings are laid. Reliefs are begun to mark the event, chisels biting into stone under torchlight. You watch the images take shape. Rows of bound captives, gifts carried by foreign envoys, the pharaoh herself standing tall, crowned and eternal. Each line carved is a promise to the future, each stroke a heartbeat of a reign that will endure. You walk alone after, through quiet halls. The wind moves softly through open courts, stirring dust and petals alike. You hear the distant croak of frogs, the low murmur of the river. Hatshepsut appears again, stepping from shadow to light, her robe simple now, her crown set aside. She stands before the unfinished relief, fingers brushing lightly across the damp stone. She whispers, almost to herself, "For them, for all of them, for all who will come after." Her voice is a breath, a vow carried into the night air. You stand silently at her side. The temple hums softly, like a cradle song. The stars wheel above, patient and bright. The river whispers its eternal hymn, and you, breathing slowly, feeling your heart ease into the rhythm of this ancient world, sink once more into its embrace. Let the images drift. Columns and gardens, ships and offerings, the calm face of a ruler who became a legend. Let them blur and soften as sleep draws nearer, like ripples fading on still water. Close your eyes. Rest. Drift with the river. with the stars, with Hatshepsut's legacy, deeper and deeper into night. The wind of early morning brushes gently across the cliffs of western Thebes, carrying with it the coolness of night before the sun begins to rise. You feel it against your skin as you stand at the base of the great terraces of Djeseru, the Holy of Holies. The temple is waking. You hear the scrape of sandals on stone, the low hum of voices as workers sweep the courts, the rhythmic splash of water poured over flagstones to keep the dust down. A distant rooster crows from a nearby village, and the sound feels timeless, as if it has echoed through millennia. Hatshepsut steps from a shaded doorway into the growing light. Her linen gown catches the first rays of dawn, and her gold collar gleams softly. She carries herself with ease, yet there is gravity in her posture, as though every step belongs not just to herself, but to the two lands she rules. Behind her, attendants follow carrying scrolls, clay tablets, trays of bread and fruit for the morning meal. Senenmut walks at her side, unfurling papyri marked with red ink, plans for a new set of chapels to honor Hathor and Anubis within the temple complex. You walk with them through the inner court, where columns rise like open lotus flowers, turned to stone. The carvings are bright still, the pigments fresh, telling stories of gods and voyages, of offerings and blessings. You pause before a panel showing ships laden with exotic goods, frankincense trees planted in baskets, tall giraffes, apes, and heaps of gold rings piled high. A scribe stands nearby, touching up a line of hieroglyphs with steady hands. The temple is not only a monument, it is alive, ever becoming. The day's audience begins in a shaded hall. You watch as officials from far provinces approach, their heads bowed, their hands presenting gifts. Turquoise mined from Sinai, panther skins from Nubia, delicate ivory carvings, amphorae sealed with beeswax containing wine from the oases. Each item is placed before the pharaoh. Hatshepsut's voice is soft as she inquires about harvests, about road repairs, about the health of distant villages. Her tone is calm, steady, the tone of one who listens as deeply as she speaks. You hear a story whispered among the attendants, a tale from years earlier, how, when she first assumed regency, there was murmuring, doubts whispered in corners. A woman, a king. Was it possible? And yet she did not hesitate. She took on the regalia, the false beard, the kilt of a pharaoh, not to disguise herself, but to step fully into the role the gods had placed before her. She ruled not as queen, but as Matkare, the truth of the Ka of Ra. You feel the power of that title in your chest, as though it were carved into your own heart. As the hall empties, the afternoon light turns golden. You follow her to a balcony overlooking the gardens. The imported myrrh trees stand taller now, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. The pools reflect the blue of the sky, and the drifting clouds, children from nearby villages, chosen to serve in the temple schools, run in quiet games along the shaded edges, their laughter like bells in the warm air. Hatshepsut watches them with a faint smile, her hand resting lightly on the stone railing. Then she turns her gaze toward the desert beyond, toward the Valley of the Kings. In the far distance, tombs are being cut into cliffs, deep and hidden, ready to cradle those who will one day follow her into eternity. She speaks softly, almost to herself. about the fragility of life and the strength of stone, about how a name carved deeply enough might outlast the body that bore it. You hear the weight of her words and feel the quiet ache of mortality behind them. Evening descends. You join her on a ceremonial walk through the temple as the torches are lit. Their glow shimmers on the white limestone, turning it honey-colored, warm and alive. Priests chant low hymns to Amun, their voices weaving through the halls like strands of silk. Musicians play softly, the plaintive wail of a flute, the heartbeat thump of a hand drum, the rattle of a sistrum. The sound is hypnotic, carrying you deeper into stillness. Hatshepsut pauses before a massive statue of herself, seated, calm, eternal. Her stone face gazes forward with serene strength, hands resting on knees, wearing the Nemes headdress and the Uraeus serpent that proclaims kingship. She reaches out, laying her palm on the cool stone cheek, and for a moment, it is as if she is touching her own soul, reflected back to her in granite. You feel the intimacy of that gesture, the quiet recognition of her own place in the endless tide of time. Night falls. The temple grows silent. You wander with her through the empty courts, the stars bright above, the constellations familiar to Egyptian eyes for countless centuries. She speaks of them softly, naming each one. Sopdet, the dog star, herald of the Nile flood. Sa, the spirit of Osiris among the stars, and the imperishable circumpolar stars, those that never die, never set. You tilt your head back, letting the vision of them fill your mind. Each point of light a reminder of eternity. You walk together to the edge of the cliffs where the desert stretches out, vast and dark, scattered with pale stones that glow faintly under the moon. The air is cool now, scented with dust and distant water. Hatshepsut is quiet for a long time, her gaze lost in that expanse. When she finally speaks, her voice is low, almost a whisper. One day, my name may be struck from stone, but the wind will remember, the river will remember, the stars will remember. You feel the truth of her words, like a tide moving through you. You see, in a flicker of vision, the centuries ahead, chisels striking her cartouches, statues toppled, histories rewritten. Yet you also see what endures. The temple walls still standing, the stories rediscovered, the whispers of her deeds carried forward by scholars and dreamers. Her memory is like the Nile itself, sometimes hidden, sometimes wide and bright, but always flowing. The wind lifts again, brushing through your hair, carrying with it the distant scent of lotus. You close your eyes, letting the sound of the river far below lull you. Around you, the temple seems to breathe. The night hums with unseen life, with the soft heartbeat of an ancient world. Your breath slows. Your thoughts grow quiet. The stars above blur into soft light, like lanterns carried on the river of sleep. And there, standing beside Hatshepsut, beneath the eternal sky, you drift deeper, deeper still, into a night without end. A hush settles over the Red Sea coast, where pale dawn light touches the rippling water and turns it into molten silver. You stand on a rocky shore beside newly built ships, their cedar hulls gleaming with fresh oil. The masts rise like slender palms, and bright linen sails are furled tight, waiting for the morning wind. Seagulls wheel overhead, their cries sharp and distant, mingling with the low hum of sailors preparing for departure. Hatshepsut is there, her robes lifting gently in the breeze, her eyes bright with quiet resolve. You sense the presence of something rare here, a queen who dreams not only of temples and monuments, but of distant horizons, of trade routes carried across the backs of waves. Around her, priests offer blessings to Hathor, Lady of the Sycamore, protector of journeys. The smoke of incense drifts over the decks, curling in patterns that look like whispered prayers. The fleet is bound for Punt, a land of wonders, spoken of in hushed tones by sailors and merchants. You imagine it as you stand there, groves of frankincense trees, heavy with resin, ebony dark as night, exotic animals stepping softly through shadowed forests. The promise of this journey hums in the air, mingling with the tang of salt and cedar. The crews move with careful rhythm. Oars are stowed, ropes coiled, jars of water and grain packed in neat rows. You hear their voices, low, measured, speaking of families left behind, of hopes for what treasures might return. Hatshepsut steps aboard the lead ship, her attendants following with scrolls and offerings. The prow cuts gently through the shallows, and you feel the slow sway beneath your feet as you step aboard behind her. The sails unfurl. The wind catches them with a soft, swelling sound, and suddenly the fleet is gliding forward, leaving the familiar banks of Egypt behind. The water glitters, the horizon opens, and the ships move like birds in formation, their shadows stretching long across the sea. You hear the creak of timbers, the rhythmic dip of oars, the murmured prayers of sailors staring out at endless blue. Days pass in a soft blur. The sea shifts from turquoise to deep indigo, and you feel the sun on your shoulders, the salt spray cool against your face. At night, the crew sleeps in hammocks slung between beams, and the stars wheel above, guiding them. Hatshepsut walks the deck in silence, her gaze steady on the horizon. You feel her thoughts, a mixture of hope and weight, of legacy and the unknown. Then, at last, land appears. A low cry rises from the sailors, their eyes wide as they point. The coast of Punt unfolds before you, lush and green, unlike the golden sands of Egypt. Palm trees rise along the shoreline, and smoke drifts lazily from huts on stilts above the water. You hear strange bird calls, see bright plumage flashing in the sun, smell a sweetness in the air carried from unseen blossoms. Boats are lowered into the shallows, and you follow her to shore. The people of Punt emerge from the trees, curious, cautious, adorned with shells and beads. They bring gifts, rings of gold, baskets of incense, live animals, plants whose leaves shimmer in the light. The air is filled with the sound of many voices, different languages woven together like strands of a single cloth. Hatshepsut steps forward, her attendants carrying fine linen, beads, and carved figurines to present in return. There is no clash of weapons here, only the soft cadence of trade, of hands exchanging gifts, of agreements spoken in gestures and smiles. You feel the peace of it settle in your heart, the quiet triumph of building bridges instead of walls. For days, the ships are loaded with treasures, myrrh trees, carefully dug and cradled in baskets of fertile soil, ebony logs stacked neatly, jars of fragrant resin sealed with clay. Scribes sit cross-legged on mats, writing every detail on scrolls, numbers, names, prayers of thanks. You watch Hatshepsut standing on a rise above the shore, her eyes sweeping over the activity. The wind stirs her robe, and you feel her satisfaction, not pride alone, but the deep calm of a vision made real. The return voyage is long and quiet. At night, lanterns swing gently, casting golden light over sleeping sailors. You sit on the deck beside Hatshepsut as she gazes at the stars. She names them softly, her voice low, her breath slowing in rhythm with the waves. These lights, she whispers, guided our fathers and will guide those who come long after us. You close your eyes, feeling the night rock you like a cradle, her words a lullaby that settles into your bones. When Egypt's shores appear again, the fleet is greeted with music and cheers. Trumpets sound, drums roll, and people line the banks waving palm fronds. The ships dock, and the treasures are carried ashore in procession. You walk among them, living trees with fragrant leaves, exotic creatures led gently on ropes, amphora gleaming with seal marks. The air is rich with incense as priests burn offerings in thanks. Hatshepsut rides in a chariot toward Thebes, the treasures following in long lines. Crowds shout blessings. Children scatter petals in the path. You see pride in the eyes of her people, not fear, not mere obedience, but pride, glowing and warm as sunlight on the Nile. At Deir el-Bahari, the new reliefs begin. You watch artisans carve the voyage into stone, ships laden with goods, Puntite envoys with curious hats, myrrh trees cradled like sacred gifts. You see Hatshepsut herself immortalized in paint and chisel, standing tall before the gods, receiving the bounty of distant lands. The temple walls sing with color and detail, a hymn to her vision. Later, when the work is done for the day, the temple grows quiet. You walk alone through the colonnades, hearing only the soft rustle of evening wind. Hatshepsut is there, resting on a low stone bench. Her face is lit by the last light of sunset, her hands folded in her lap. She does not speak at first. Instead, she watches the sky, the shifting hues of rose and violet, the first evening star kindling above. Then she says, almost dreamily, "All things pass, floods, seasons, rains, but when we build with care, something remains. A name, a story, a stone." Her voice is gentle, like water flowing over smooth rock. You feel the words settle into your heart, steady and timeless. The stars brighten. The wind carries the scent of distant incense, faint and sweet. The temple stands behind you, solid and eternal, its terraces climbing toward heaven. The river hums far below, endless and calm. You breathe slowly, deeply, feeling the rhythm of her world merge with your own. The images soften, ships, gardens, columns, stars, all drifting into the wide, quiet sea of your mind. And there, under the ancient sky, With Hatshepsut's voice lingering like a blessing, you sink once more, softly, into sleep. The night air is cool in Thebes, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine. You stand in the shadow of towering pylons, their faces carved with the likeness of gods and kings, each figure lit faintly by rows of oil lamps. The great court of Karnak is hushed, save for the soft shuffle of sandals as priests pass by, their arms laden with bowls of incense and garlands of lotus flowers. You follow the glow of torches through the columns, those vast pillars that rise like a forest, frozen in prayer. Their capitals flare like blossoms high above you, painted in shades of blue and red that catch the flicker of the lamps. You feel a sense of being very small, and yet part of something immeasurably grand, a living cathedral of stone humming softly with memory and devotion. Hatshepsut enters, the sound of her steps measured and calm. Tonight is a ritual of thanksgiving, a night to honor Amun for the blessings that have poured into Egypt under her reign. You see the priests bow low, hear the low chant of the lector priest as he begins the sacred recitations. Hatshepsut raises her hands, offering wine, bread, and myrrh. Her voice is low and melodic, steady as the Nile itself. You feel the words vibrating in your chest, though they are spoken in the ancient tongue. Prayers of gratitude, petitions for the land's continued fertility, promises to uphold Maat, the harmony of all things. You move with her deeper into the sanctuary. The air grows cooler, heavier with the scent of incense. A golden bark rests on its pedestal, the image of Amun within hidden behind linen veils. Hatshepsut bows her head, and for a moment, all is still. The flickering lamps create soft patterns on the walls, and the hieroglyphs seem to shimmer, as if alive. You close your eyes, feeling the pulse of this ancient place in the quiet between heartbeats. Later, she returns to the outer courts. The night sky stretches overhead, deep and endless, and she lifts her gaze to the stars. She speaks softly to Seinenmut at her side, her tone thoughtful. They speak of the obelisks she has raised, those great spears of stone that pierce the sky, carved with prayers that will outlast dynasties. You remember them, the towering shafts of granite, their tips covered in electrum, catching the sun by day and the starlight by night. You see again the obelisk that stands tallest, gleaming at dawn. You were there when the workers halted upright with ropes and prayers, when drums pounded in rhythm with the straining of hundreds of hands. You felt the earth tremble as the stone found its footing, felt the crowd's collective breath release in awe. Now, standing beside her, you look upon it once more, its hieroglyphs alive in the torchlight, proclaiming her as Pharaoh, beloved of Amun, chosen by the gods. The temple hums with quiet activity through the night. Scribes work by lamplight, copying hymns and records onto fresh scrolls. Artisans polish statues, their bronze tools whispering softly against stone. Servants carry jars of oil, their footsteps muffled by woven reeds. You wander through these spaces, feeling the heartbeat of an empire in each small sound. Beyond the walls of Karnak, Thebes sleeps. The streets are dark, lit only by the glow of cooking fires, banked low for the night. Donkeys bray softly in their pens, and dogs curl beneath the eaves of mud brick houses. The river slides past, black and silver, carrying secrets and silt alike. You imagine farmers dreaming of harvests, children dreaming of festivals, sailors dreaming of winds that will speed them home. Hatshepsut retires to her private chambers high above the palace gardens. You follow her steps, climbing a stairway where niches hold small statues of protective deities. Tauret, with her lion's head and swollen belly. Bes, with his fierce grimace and dwarfed frame. Oil lamps glow softly, casting halos of gold around each image. The air is cool here, and the scent of lotus oil lingers. She sits on a low couch woven of papyrus and linen, her crown set aside, her face bare of ceremony. The years have touched her gently. The lines at the corners of her eyes speak not of weariness, but of wisdom. An attendant pours water from a tall jar, and she washes her hands slowly, watching the ripples in the basin as though reading the future in its patterns. She speaks then, not as Pharaoh, but as a woman, of her father Thutmose, whose voice still guides her in dreams, of her daughter Neferur, bright and young, whom she trains carefully, teaching her the weight of duty. Her words are soft, spoken almost to herself, and you feel them like warm rain in your mind. She speaks of balance, of legacy, of the day when she will walk no more in these halls, but hopes her works will speak for her. The candlelight trembles. Outside, the wind carries the sound of distant night birds. You lean against the smooth plaster wall, feeling drowsy, lulled by the rhythm of her words, by the soft rustle of her linen as she reclines, by the faint creak of papyrus mats underfoot. Later, she rises, moving to a window that overlooks the gardens. Moonlight spills over the myrrh trees she planted, their branches swaying gently. The pools reflect the stars, each ripple a slow lullaby, somewhere beyond the gardens. The cliffs stand sentinel, their tombs hidden and silent, their openings waiting for those who will one day rest within. Hatshepsut gazes at them, long and steady, and you feel her contemplating her own eternity, her own place among those who came before. A priest arrives quietly, bearing news. The temple offerings have been recorded, the obelisk inscriptions completed, the nightly chants performed. She nods, thanks him softly, and he withdraws like a shadow into the dark. You remain with her as the night deepens. The sounds of the palace fade until only the whisper of wind remains. Hatshepsut hums a low tune, a childhood song perhaps, something from the time before crowns and courts. It drifts through the chamber like smoke, light and soothing. You feel your eyelids grow heavy, your breath slow to match the rhythm of her melody. The temple beyond seems to breathe with you. The column stands silent and patient. The obelisks hold their vigil. The hieroglyphs glimmer faintly as though lit from within. The city sleeps. The river flows. The stars turn slowly in their eternal dance. Hatshepsut turns from the window, her face soft with reflection. She lies down upon her couch, and the lamplight dims. You feel yourself lying down too, in spirit beside her, letting the weight of the day fall away like sand, slipping through fingers. Outside, the night deepens into something endless. The desert wind carries whispers of old kings, old queens, their names still echoing in the stone. The air cools against your skin, and you pull the cloak of sleep tighter around you. Breathe softly now. Let the images of ships and temples, gardens and stars fade into dream. Feel the weight of history as a comfort, steady and calm, and as the Nile sings softly in the distance, and the first light of dawn is still far away, you drift deeper and deeper into the quiet, eternal night. The first glow of dawn spreads like a whisper across the horizon, painting the cliffs of western Thebes in muted shades of rose and amber. You stand again in the quiet courts of Djeser, the temple of Hatshepsut, its terraces serene, its columns still cool to the touch after a long night. The workers have not yet arrived. There is only the sigh of the desert wind and the faraway murmur of the Nile. You hear the faint creak of a door opening. Hatshepsut emerges wrapped in a simple linen cloak, no crown upon her head, her hair unadorned, her feet bare against the stone. The air is chill, scented with sand and early jasmine. She stands on the upper terrace, gazing toward the east, where the first light kindles the horizon. Her breath comes slow and steady, and you feel her thoughts stretching far beyond the walls around you. The years of her reign have deepened. The obelisks rise. The temple gardens bloom. The fleets have returned with treasures, and the Nile has flooded and receded in its eternal rhythm. Yet whispers have begun to stir in the halls of power. Whispers from those who resent her boldness, who wish to see her name fade. You feel those currents moving through the air like unseen winds, stirring shadows even in bright courts. She senses them too. You see it in her eyes, calm yet distant, as though she listens to voices only she can hear. Senenmut approaches quietly, bringing scrolls of new decrees to review. They sit together on the stone bench overlooking the gardens, their conversation low and deliberate. You catch fragments, repairs to the temple roof, shipments of gold from Nubia, the training of her daughter Neferura in priestly duties, practical matters. Yet beneath them, you hear the weight of a ruler who knows that time itself is the most fragile gift. The day warms, and with it, the temple stirs to life. Artisans begin their careful work, touching up painted reliefs. You watch as they apply thin washes of blue and green to the carved images of Punt, slender trees, birds with strange plumage, Hatshepsut herself receiving offerings. Scribes crouch in the shade, tallying jars of grain, recording births and deaths, victories and festivals. Every act, every line of ink is part of the kingdom's heartbeat, steady and sure. But not all eyes are kind. In the deeper corridors of the palace, you hear the murmurs of certain courtiers, men who remember old customs, who whisper that a woman, even as Pharaoh, upsets the balance. They speak in low voices of Thutmose III, now grown, waiting in the wings. You do not hear anger in their words, only that sharp edge of ambition that has always lived in human hearts. The shadows of politics gather, as they always do. Hatshepsut walks among them unshaken. You follow her through the colonnades, past lines of statue, carved in her likeness, each one bearing the regalia of a king. She stops before one, her fingers brushing the cool cheek of the stone face. The statue looks out with eternal calm, and you feel her steadying herself. drawing strength from her own image, from the legacy she is building stone by stone, moment by moment. Later, she attends a festival in the outer courts. The priests lead a golden bark of Amun through the crowds, the scent of myrrh thick in the air. Dancers leap and sway, their arms raised to the sky. Musicians play harps and lutes, the music flowing like water. The people cheer as Hatshepsut passes, some throwing garlands, others bowing low. For a moment, the undercurrents of court vanish, replaced by pure reverence, pure joy. You feel it in your chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. As night falls, she returns to her private gardens. The torches are few here, the shadows long and soft. She walks slowly along a narrow path between pools of still water, the reflections of stars trembling on their surfaces. Frogs croak quietly, and a nightbird flits overhead. She stops to touch the leaves of a myrrh tree brought long ago from Punt, now thriving in Egyptian soil. Her hand lingers on the rough bark, as though in communion with all she has brought forth. She speaks softly, almost to herself, but you are close enough to hear. "The stone will hold my name," she says. "But what of the hearts of those who follow? Will they remember? Or will they carve away what they cannot bear?" Her voice is gentle, without bitterness, only wonder, the eternal wondering of a soul reaching beyond its own time. You walk with her along the edge of the terrace. Beyond lies the valley, quiet under the silver light of the moon. Somewhere out there, masons carve tombs deep into cliffs, preparing eternal houses for those who will one day lie within. You feel the depth of history pressing close, not heavy, but endless, an ocean of time in which every life is a single ripple. Back inside, she sits before a low table. Scrolls are spread out, wax tablets filled with notations. Neferur enters, young, bright-eyed, wearing a linen robe embroidered with gold thread. Hatshepsut smiles softly at her daughter, gesturing for her to sit. Together, they review the offerings recorded for the temple, the names of villages that have sent grain and cattle. Neferur asks questions in a voice like clear water, and Hatshepsut answers with patience, weaving lessons into every phrase. You feel the tenderness between them, the hope of a mother who sees beyond her own life into the future that will bloom after she is gone. The lamps burn lower. The air grows cooler. Hatshepsut sets aside the scrolls, placing her hand gently over Neferure's. "Remember," she whispers, "Yat is not only for kings and queens. It is for all. Balance the scales in your own heart, and Egypt will endure." Neferura nods, her eyes wide and luminous in the lamplight. You leave them there, mother and daughter, bathed in the soft glow of flickering light, and step back onto the terrace. The temple stands behind you, silent and strong, a testament to vision and devotion. The obelisks glint faintly, catching what little moonlight they can. The night wind carries the faintest whisper of distant drums, fading as they reach you. Above, the stars are bright and endless. You tilt your head back, letting them fill your vision, letting your breath match the rhythm of the night. The air is cool on your face, and the scent of stone and flowers wraps around you like a gentle veil. You feel sleep drawing near, slow and certain. The images of the day, temples, ships, festivals, whispers, dissolve into a soft blur. All that remains is the steady heartbeat of history, the calm presence of a woman who shaped her world with stone and grace. Breathe slowly, close your eyes, and drift deeper, deeper still, carried by the river of time into a night without end. A pale dawn spreads across Thebes, spilling gold into every shadowed corner of the city. You stand on the broad stone steps of Djeser Djeseru, feeling the warmth of the sun rise slowly against your skin. The temple has been alive for years now, its colonnades bright with paint, its terraces scented with blossoms brought from faraway lands. But time, as always, whispers beneath everything. You feel it in the stillness before the day begins, in the way the wind carries fine grains of sand across the inscriptions. Hatshepsut walks beside you, her step steady, but her eyes seem to look beyond the horizon. Her reign has been one of balance and prosperity, yet the murmurs at court have grown louder, more insistent. Thutmose III has come of age, and those who once bowed easily now speak behind carved doors, wondering how long a woman's shadow should stretch across the throne of Horus. You follow her into the cool interior of the temple. Priests are beginning the morning offerings. Bowls of milk placed before statues, bread cut and arranged, incense catching flame and sending curls of fragrance toward the ceiling. The painted walls gleam in the torchlight. Images of Hatshepsut in full regalia. Images of Amun blessing her. Images of expeditions, processions, and harvests. The art is alive with color, but you notice, here and there, small chips, edges worn by hands or time, the beginning of something fragile. She stops before a relief that shows her offering mat to the gods. The carved image is serene, her stone likeness eternal. She reaches out, her fingers brushing the surface, as though to steady herself in the midst of what is coming. You hear her voice softly, "What is carved cannot be undone." A pause, then more softly still, "Or perhaps it can." Outside, the streets of Thebes hum with life. Markets fill with chatter, fishmongers shouting their wares, weavers unrolling bright linens, children darting between stalls with baskets of figs and dates. The people live as they always have, tending fields, praising the gods, singing lullabies under the same stars. To them, the throne is distant. Its changes only faint ripples in their daily rhythm. Yet you feel how close power and fragility live side by side. A reed boat floating on a broad river, steady only as long as the current is kind. In the palace, you walk with Hatshepsut through long halls lined with papyrus columns. Thutmose III walks there too now, grown tall, his eyes sharp. He bows to her, but you sense tension beneath the gesture. The courtiers watch from the shadows, each expression unreadable, each thought tucked away like a scroll in a sealed chest. She does not waver. Her chin is high, her steps sure, her words measured and calm, but you feel the weight pressing heavier now, like the desert heat before a storm. That evening, in her private chamber, Hatshepsut sits with Neferura. The lamps glow softly, their light catching the gold threads in the girl's robe. Neferura reads aloud from a scroll, a hymn to Amun, its rhythm gentle as waves against a shore. Hatshepsut listens, a faint smile touching her lips. She speaks then of the temple, of its gardens, of the trees that will outlive them both. Remember the names, she whispers, for even when they are struck from stone, memory keeps them alive. Neferura nods, her young eyes wide and luminous. Night falls. You walk with Hatshepsut out onto the highest terrace. The cliffs behind the temple loom dark against the stars. She gazes out over the river, silver in the moonlight, her expression unreadable. The wind stirs her robe, carrying with it the distant sounds of drums. From a festival across the water, she stands silently for a long time. You feel her listening, not to words, but to the slow turning of shape. Weeks drift by, each day like a bead on a necklace. Temples are tended, statues polished, offerings given. But then, quietly, changes begin. You see workers climb scaffolds with chisels, instructed by new voices. At first it is small, a single cartouche chipped away on a lesser wall, a statue moved from its place, left to gather dust in a shadowed corridor. Then more, inscriptions altered, images recarved. Hatshepsut's likeness fades under fresh plaster, her name's cut away. You stand before a wall where her image once offered mot. Now there is only rough stone, as if she never stood there at all. The artisans work quickly, glancing over their shoulders, following orders they do not speak aloud. You feel a pang deep in your chest, a quiet grief, as if watching petals fall from a flower long tended. But Hatshepsut is not there to see this. She has stepped into her final years, withdrawing to quieter chambers, walking the temple gardens at dusk. You follow her through the rows of myrrh trees. Now tall and strong, she runs her fingers along the bark, feeling the life within. All things are returned to the earth, she says softly, but some things remain. Her voice trembles, not with fear, but with the depth of someone who knows she is part of a story larger than herself. One morning, she does not rise. The palace is hushed. Priests move silently through the halls, their heads bowed, their prayers whispered. You walk with them as they prepare her body, washing it with sacred oils, wrapping it in linen, placing amulets against her skin. The eye of Horus for protection, the scarab for rebirth, the ankh for eternal life. You feel the reverence in their movements, the love in their touch, the weight of goodbye in the air. They carry her to her tomb, cut deep into the western cliffs. The sun is setting as you walk the path, the procession slow and solemn. The valley echoes with chants, with the steady beat of drums. Torches flicker in the wind, casting long shadows on the rock. You stand at the entrance as the priests speak the final words, sealing her away with treasures and prayers, sending her spirit to join the imperishable stars. Years pass, decades, centuries. You see the temple weather storms and sun, its paint fading, its statues losing features but not presence. You see the names chiseled away, the statues buried or broken, but still in quiet corners, her image remains, gazing calmly across time. You see travelers come and go. Priests chant new hymns. Conquerors ride past, unaware of the queen who once walked here. But you feel her still, in the stones, in the air, in the hush of the gardens. One night, centuries later, under a sky unchanged, a wanderer stands where you stand, now running his hand along the same carved walls. The wind carries the scent of distant blossoms. He whispers her name, uncertain, half-remembered, Hatshepsut. And in that whisper, you feel her stir again, alive in memory, in story, in the heartbeat of the land itself. You stand there with her spirit beside you, under the eternal stars, and you breathe slowly. The night hums with history, with lives lived and lost and remembered. The temple glows softly in moonlight, its terraces stretching toward the sky, its stones holding secrets and dreams. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let the winds of time cradle you. Feel her presence, calm and steady, guiding you deeper and deeper into the quiet river of sleep. The night wind sighs over the cliffs of western Thebes, brushing through the mouth of the valley where tombs lie hidden deep in stone. You are walking with slow steps along a narrow path, the air cool against your skin, the stars glimmering sharp above like distant lamps. Below, the Nile gleams faintly, silver and black, winding through the dark fields. You hear nothing but the hush of sand shifting under your feet and the faint cry of a nightbird somewhere in the distance. Centuries have passed since Hatshepsut's voice last echoed in these halls, yet tonight you feel her presence as though she has never left. The temple remains, weathered by time but still standing, its colonnades rising like ghosts of lotus stalks, its terraces reaching gently toward the cliffs. You step through its outer courts, brushing your hand along walls where color has faded, but lines still sing, faint hieroglyphs speaking of voyages, offerings, gods, and the woman who dared to rule as Pharaoh. You pause before a wall that bears strange scars. Once, her name was carved here in clear, proud glyphs. Then came other hands, chiseling, striking, smoothing, until only shallow marks remain. You kneel close, tracing those marks with your fingers, feeling the faint grooves where history tried to erase her. Yet still, you sense her name, like a shadow left in sunlight, an echo too deep to silence. In your mind's eye, you see her as she was in life, walking through these courts in bright linen, the double crown resting lightly on her brow, her voice calm as she spoke to priests and builders and emissaries. You see the flash of her golden pectoral, the glint of sunlight on an obelisk newly raised. Those images float through you now, like petals on still water. A priest's chant drifts from the inner sanctuary, not of her time, but of another age, another ruler. Yet somehow, the chant feels like it belongs to her too, as though every prayer spoken here, no matter the years between, still brushes against her memory. You step closer, feeling the coolness of stone columns, the faint tremble of your own heartbeat in this deep silence. The torchlight plays tricks in the shadows. For a moment, you think you see her, standing near a column, her profile calm, her hands folded at her waist. She is not crowned now, not wrapped in ceremony, but simply herself, a woman who carried the weight of 2 lands and left behind something far larger than her own life. The vision lingers, then fades, leaving only moonlight and stone. You move deeper into the temple, to a chamber few visit now. The air is heavy with the scent of old dust and faint traces of incense. On the walls are scenes of her expedition to Punt, still vivid despite the years. Ships under sail, baskets of myrrh trees, strange animals led by ropes. You imagine the hands that carved them, the pride that filled the air when those walls were fresh and new, when the smell of wet plaster still clung to the air. You sit on the cool floor, leaning back against a pillar. Time flows around you like the Nile itself, endless, patient, full of voices. You hear them faintly now, artisans laughing in the sunlight, priests chanting hymns, children chasing each other in the gardens. You hear Hatshepsut's voice, firm and gentle, giving instructions, offering prayers, dreaming aloud of what her Egypt could be. Those sounds swirl like soft music in your mind until you cannot tell memory from imagination. Outside, the wind rises. You step out again onto the upper terrace. The cliffs loom dark, the stars wheeling slowly overhead. You think of her hidden tomb, carved into these very cliffs, sealed with amulets and prayers. The years tried to hide her name, but the stone remembers, and the wind remembers, and now you remember. You think of the artisans who returned decades later, under orders they could not refuse, to chip away her images, to carve her name from monuments. Perhaps some worked slowly, hoping their hesitation might spare a single glyph. Perhaps one or two paused in their work, whispering her name under their breath, a quiet act of defiance. You feel their presence too, their humanity layered into these stones. The temple around you hums softly in the night air. The columns feel alive beneath your fingertips, each one a witness to lives that flickered and faded. You walk slowly along the ramp that leads down to the lower terrace, your shadow long and thin in the moonlight. At the edge, you stop and look back. The temple rises tier upon tier, serene despite the scars of history. A poem in stone dedicated to a woman who dared to dream beyond her age. You think of her legacy, not as a list of monuments or decrees, but as something deeper, a widening of what was possible, a ripple sent through time. You think of her standing in these very courts, her daughter by her side, the future unfolding like a papyrus scroll in her mind. You think of her hands touching these same stones, warm and alive, certain that what she built would speak for her long after she was gone. The night grows colder. You wrap your arms around yourself, but you feel no fear here, only awe, only peace. You sit on the edge of a step, listening to the whispers of the desert wind as it threads through the columns, hearing in it a voice both distant and near. Matkara, her throne name, the truth of the Ka of Ra. You speak it softly, and the sound seems to linger, as though the stones themselves have caught it. Hours pass without you noticing. The stars drift westward. A faint light begins to touch the eastern sky. The temple walls, pale in moonlight, begin to warm with the first blush of dawn. You rise slowly, stretching, feeling the stiffness of long sitting. The air smells faintly of flowers again, carried from gardens far below. You take one last walk through the upper court. You run your fingers along the rough edges where her name was cut away. You whisper it again, quietly, a vow that she will not be forgotten. The wind stirs, and for a moment, you imagine it carries her laughter, her command, her prayers, all of it woven into the rhythm of this eternal place. The sun's first ray strikes the temple facade, bathing it in gold. You close your eyes, feeling warmth spread across your face. In that light, you see her again, not as a ghost, but as memory alive, a thread of life unbroken by time. Her crown gleams, her eyes are calm, her voice is the wind itself, telling you that stone may crumble and names may fade, but the truth of what we build, the love we give, endures. The river murmurs far below, the gardens sway gently, the columns stand silent, but alive with story, and you, breathing slowly, feel yourself sinking back into that calm. Let your eyes close. Let the sands of time drift over you like a soft blanket, and let her story cradle you as you drift deeper, deeper still, into a night without end. The desert wind carries a low hum as you walk the path toward the western cliffs. It is early morning again, but centuries later, and the light has the same soft quality as it did in her time. You feel the grains of sand underfoot, hear them shift like whispers of countless feet that came before you. Thebes lies quiet behind you, the Nile shimmering beyond, but here among the cliffs, the air is thick with memory. You step into the Valley of the Kings, silent, timeless, its walls high and sun-baked, streaked with shades of ochre and bone. The tomb entrances are simple, dark openings carved into the rock, each one a doorway to the past. Somewhere within these labyrinths lies her hidden resting place, lost for centuries, then found again, chamber of shadows and secrets. You imagine the day her body was brought here, priests in long white robes, the scent of resins and sacred oils, the low thud of drums beating a heartbeat through the air. You imagine the procession winding its way through the valley, each step a farewell, each chant a bridge between the world of the living and the land beyond. You hear the words of the Book of the Dead murmured in soft cadence. May her heart not betray her. May her soul be light as a feather. May she live forever in the field of reeds. You stand now at the mouth of a narrow passage. The torch you carry flickers, its light brushing the carved walls. There are faded images here. Anubis with his jackal head, guiding the departed, Isis with her wings spread wide. Time has chipped them, but their meaning remains. Strong as the desert itself, you reach out, feeling the grooves of their lines, the coolness of the rock beneath your fingers. Deeper inside, the air grows cooler, stiller. The sound of your footsteps is absorbed by the sand. You feel enclosed by history, as though you have stepped not just into a tomb, but into the memory of the land. In the innermost chamber, you see the faint outlines of canopic jars, the remnants of a coffin's gilded wood, fragments of linen that once wrapped a royal body. Dust lies thick, but there is reverence here, even in ruin. You close your eyes and see her as she might have been in those final moments, dressed in white, adorned with amulets, the Eye of Horus, the scarab of rebirth, the jed pillar for stability, her face calm, her breath even as the priests spoke blessings, her spirit already reaching beyond the veil. You feel the weight of her choices, her triumphs, her losses, all settling into stillness like sand after wind. Centuries have passed since those rites, and the world outside has shifted and turned. Dynasties have risen and fallen. Foreign tongues have echoed through the courts of Egypt. The Nile has flooded and receded over and over. Yet here, In this quiet chamber, time feels held in place by her presence, as though her name, even struck from stone, still hums beneath the surface. You leave the tomb slowly, stepping back into sunlight. The cliffs loom high above, their faces craggy and gold in the morning light. You sit on a smooth rock and gaze across the valley. From here, you can almost see the terraces of her temple in the distance, still clinging to the base of the cliffs like a crown. The breeze brings with it a faint scent of flowers from the gardens she planted so long ago. You imagine their roots deep in the soil, drinking water carried up from the river by long lines of servants, their blossoms swaying just as they did when she walked among them. As the day warms, you wander back toward the river. On the way, you pass a group of modern workers clearing sand from a ruined wall. One of them calls out softly, brushing away the centuries to reveal a faint hieroglyph. Her cartouche, nearly erased but not gone. The shape of her name emerges like a shadow in sunlight, fragile and enduring all at once. You lean closer, tracing the faint curves, feeling the sudden rush of connection, the link between then and now, between her breath and yours. You sit nearby and watch as they work carefully with small brushes, preserving each detail. A scribe among them reads aloud from a tablet, piecing together a hymn once carved in her honor. The words drift into the warm air. Beloved of Amun, giver of life, who builds for eternity. Your heart swells at the sound. The hymn feels like an echo of her voice, rising again after silence. The river is calm as you reach its banks. You watch the papyrus sway in the breeze, hear the soft lap of water against the shore. A fisherman casts his net, just as his ancestors did in her time. Children run along the bank, their laughter ringing like bells. The rhythms of life are unchanged, looping through time, each generation unknowingly walking in the footsteps of those before. That evening, you return to Djeser Djeseru. The temple is quiet, the tourists gone, the workers resting. You climb to the upper terrace and sit on the stone railing, watching the sunset ignite the cliffs with gold. The statues stand silent around you, some broken, some whole, all bathed in light. You imagine her walking these terraces again, her hands brushing the same railing, her mind filled with plans and prayers. The shadows lengthen. Torches are lit in the lower court, their glow soft and warm. You hear the distant sound of a drum, steady and slow. The air cools, carrying the scent of stone and dust, and the faint sweetness of flowers. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the presence of all who have passed here. Priests, builders, artists, farmers, and her, always her. Time folds in on itself. In your mind, you see her seated before the god Amun, receiving life and power from his hand. You see her watching her fleet sail toward Punt, her eyes bright with dreams. You see her standing proud as the obelisk rises, as the temple walls bloom with color, as the people cheer her name. And you see her in the stillness of her tomb, wrapped in linen, waiting, patient as stone, for someone to remember. The night descends softly. The stars emerge, one by one, until the sky is a tapestry of light. You remain on the terrace, wrapped in silence, feeling her story settle over you like a woven cloak. Her legacy is not only in stone, but in the act of remembering, in the way her name still moves through lips and air, in the way her vision still hums in the stones beneath your hands. You breathe with the rhythm of the night, slow, even, timeless. The temple glows faintly, the cliffs darken, the wind whispers through the columns. You close your eyes and feel the steady heartbeat of the past merging with your own. Let your body grow heavy. Let your mind drift softly into shadow. Feel the calm of her world, the quiet strength of her memory, enfolding you completely. And as the river sings far below and the stars wheel overhead, you sink deeper, deeper still, into a night without end. Night settles gently over the western cliffs. The heat of the day fades, leaving a cool breeze that sighs through the ruins and the gardens alike. You walk once more along the broad terrace of Djeser-Djeseru, the temple of Hatshepsut, and the stone beneath your feet feels almost warm, as though it has stored the sun's touch for centuries. Above you, the first stars awaken, scattered across the heavens like beads upon a dark linen cloth. The temple stands calm and solemn, its columns casting long shadows in the moonlight. You feel the air heavy with centuries of prayers, with the echo of footsteps, with the hush of memory itself. Somewhere below, the river glides through its endless course, carrying with it silt and secrets, blessings and burdens, just as it always has. You breathe in deeply, and the air smells of distant gardens, of earth, of ancient stone that has weathered countless seasons. You walk slowly past a row of statues, some broken, some whole, each one carved in the likeness of Hatshepsut, eternal, serene, holding the crook and flail of kingship. Though time has chipped away at their faces, though some stand without arms or crowns, their presence is undeniable. You place your hand against the cold stone and feel a hum, as though the memory of her still lingers within. In your mind, you see her again as she was, standing tall at the prow of a ship bound for Punt, the wind lifting her robe, walking among her priests with the scent of incense heavy in the air, standing before her people, sunlight blazing upon her crown, speaking words of blessing that carried across the crowded court like music. You hear the distant sound of drums from festivals long past, the chanting of processions, the rhythmic strike of chisels carving her name into walls meant to last forever. You follow the ramp down to the lower terrace. The walls around you glow faintly in torchlight, revealing faint remnants of painted reliefs, gardens, gods, voyages, offerings. Here, the story of her reign is carved in stone, though time and human hands have tried to obscure it. You kneel before a worn panel and trace the lines with your fingers, feeling the faint grooves, whispering her name so softly it is almost a breath. Hatshepsut, Matkare, the truth of the Ka of Ra. A wind stirs, carrying a scattering of petals from the gardens above. They fall like blessings upon the stones. You close your eyes, and for a moment, the centuries roll back. You hear voices in the distance, craftsmen calling to one another, oxen bellowing as they drag blocks of stone, the low murmur of a queen conferring with her architect. The temple is alive again in your mind, shimmering with color, bright with purpose. But as the wind shifts, you feel another presence, the slow encroachment of time, of centuries that followed her. You sense the chisels striking her name, the priest striking her images, the attempt to fold her story into silence. And yet, even in those acts, something remained. The stone still hums. The terraces still stand. Her memory is like a hidden river running beneath the desert, unseen but unstoppable. You climb back to the upper level, your steps slow and measured. The stars above have multiplied, shimmering brightly, steady and patient. You stand at the edge, looking out over the valley, where the dark outlines of tombs dot the cliffs. Somewhere out there, she rests. Somewhere out there, her spirit roams, carried on the breath of the western wind, watching over the two lands she once ruled. You think of her final journey, the quiet rituals, the long procession into the Valley of the Kings, the sealed door that held her dreams and treasures. You think of the hands that laid amulets upon her body, each one a wish for eternity. And you think of the scholars who found her again, long after her name had been buried in sand and time, their brushes uncovering the faint lines of her cartouche, their voices whispering her story back into the world. Here, under the night sky, you feel her story as a thread weaving through your own heart. It is the story of power carried with grace, of dreams carved into stone, of a woman who stepped beyond the boundaries of her age and left footprints so deep they could never be fully erased. Her temple is not just stone. It is a hymn, a lullaby carried through ages, reaching you now in the dark. You sit on the edge of the terrace, legs folded beneath you, feeling the cool stone against your palms. The breeze lifts again, gentle, carrying the faint scent of myrrh from the gardens. Below, the Nile hums softly, its current endless and calm. Above, the stars wheel slowly, their light reaching across time, touching you as they touched her. Your eyes grow heavy as you watch the sky. In your mind, you see her walking among the stars, stepping lightly, her linen robe brushing against constellations. You see her welcomed by the gods she served, their arms outstretched, their voices low and soothing. You see her laying down her earthly crown, her spirit light as a feather, carried into fields of eternal green. The temple behind you seems to breathe, each column and terrace alive with memory. The air around you feels sacred, filled with unseen voices, with the calm presence of those who came before. You breathe slowly, deeply, feeling your heartbeat match the rhythm of the night, the rhythm of the Nile, the rhythm of eternity itself. You whisper her name one last time, letting it slip from your lips like a blessing, Hatshepsut. And as you do, you feel a deep peace settle over you, as though she has heard, as though the stones themselves have heard, as though the night sky has taken her story into its endless embrace. The wind brushes your cheek, the stars shimmer, the temple stands silent and eternal, and you close your eyes and let go, drifting deeper and deeper into sleep, with her story wrapped around you like a warm linen cloak, with the night holding you as gently as the river's tide. Good night.